All right, we're live. We're back, I guess. Okay. I thought it said broadcast ended. It says end broadcast. That's a command. We've got, let's see, this is our second episode of examining Arthurian legends. We're going to alternate between more serious and lighthearted episodes. So this is going to be our first lighthearted episode where we take a look at the Arthurian legend showing up in pop culture, modern pop culture. Mostly it's going to be movies, I think. But
probably,
yeah. My first exposure to Arthurian legend in pop culture, I hope this really, grinds your gears, was Walt Disney's The Sword in the Stone.
That doesn't grind my gears too bad, because it's a Sword in the Stone. While it is a far cry away from what the myth is, it's fun. It gets the spirit of it anyway.
Okay. I was a little kid. I didn't know any better than anything.
No, and that's the other thing is I'm not gonna get mad at you for liking something like that, especially if that was your first way to get exposed to it as a kid. There's what I'm gonna do is how dare you? How dare you? How dare 6-year-old you?
It was your Arthurian gateway.
How dare your parents let you see
my name?
Actually, Poland. So, question for you: what was your first exposure to Arthur?
It may have actually been the 1963 Sword in the Stone. Actually, in terms of movies, there was also of course, the movie Excalibur, which I saw very young. I can't remember which one I saw first, but it was either one of those two. And then, of course, you have books that I think a lot of people read, like Once and Future King, growing up as well.
Yeah,
so, pretty solid King Arthur book.
For me, my first exposure to anything King Arthur was the Disney musical Fantasia, where they had the Mickey Mouse being Merlin's apprentice, conducting all the mops, and it completely ruins Merlin's workshop. So that was my first exposure to anything Arthur that I can remember. The first book that I read, I said this last time, it was Howard Pyle's King Arthur and His Knights. And then as a reward for reading that, because as I said, that was the first big kid book that I read on my own. My folks rented Excalibur from Blockbuster, and we made a big movie night out of it. So yeah. Also, I dig the shirt, Poland. Dig it.
Thanks. I do what I can. Come prepared.
Go buy Elysian Fields.
I think.
Oh, sorry. I had a cough.
I wonder.
Go buy Elysian Fields. That is so bad. That's the art from the Warriors Legends of Troy game too. That's freaking awesome.
This one's from Michael. So cool. This actually came from Greece. This is actually from Greece itself. Yeah.
Speaking of something for Michael, your link is in the description, Michael.
Whoa!
To your book.
We're so close to getting to 5K. We're 1,500 away.
And Shane Burgess is here. I hope it's Burgess and not Burgess. But anyway, Shane Burgess is here. He's part of the inspiration behind this show was him really appreciating a conversation Poland and I had. So you're kind of why we do this, Shane. Anyway, he's here and he really enjoyed the first part, Shane. So Shane, we're going to be alternating a bit with lighter and heavier episodes. We'll get back in the next episode to 1136 AD. And this episode is Arthur and pop culture, if you weren't here for that. But I remember of The Sword in the Stone from Disney. One, it's just Disney, so things are kind of digested and weird, but sometimes they did really good research and put in little things, that you might not expect. But I was really little. All I remember is him saying, I really don't have muscle like a knight, and Merlin asking, well, then how do you move around? And then suddenly he's a squirrel being chased around by a lady squirrel, and that's all I remember of the movies.
Yes, it was an odd one, that Sword in the Stone, but it's fun. It's a good time. Disney was all, especially back then it was all about that the magical whimsy of these stories and making them really lighthearted and fun. But man, I'm trying to think. I wish I had because the first big thing, you know what? Actually, there was one other King Arthur experience that is so much worse. That was one of the first ones that I remember too. Was frickin' Quest for Camelot. Came out when I was growing up, and that movie was atrocious. Oh God! And
I think I remember that. Yeah.
Also, low key, one of the greatest casts that you could ask for an Arthurian project, and it just sucked. You had like Alec Baldwin while he was James Bond voicing King Arthur. You had Gary Oldman is voicing the bad guy. Carrie Elwes from Princess Bride is voicing the blind warrior that's effectively Daredevil in medieval times. There was a random Celine Dion song in there because why not?
Excellent. You had to back then. It was a requirement.
Oh goodness.
I remember some other Lancelot or Camelot film. It might have just been Camelot. It was like made in the 60s that was on TV at one Saturday afternoon. And
that would be Camelot, I think.
Okay. Yeah, and I just, being a kid, I just couldn't sit for that long, and my dad was into it, but I don't know. So.
You're talking about the one with Richard Harris, Vanessa Redgrave, and Franco Nero. Came out in 1967.
Yeah, it must have been. My dad often mentioned Richard Harris as an actor. So yeah. But he was one of those things where you can sit for half an hour, and then being a little kid, you just want to do something else.
Yeah.
Anyway,
wasn't there one with Sean Connery too?
Yes, that was the first night, and that had Richard Gere as Lancelot. Oh God!
I thought weren't they wearing like studded, like some weird studded, like coat of plate armor?
Yeah,
something?
no, like
that sticking out to me.
It was one of those things where after Excalibur came out, every single time somebody tried to do something Arthurian, everybody had like this ridiculous plate mail because it was kind of a step. Like the armor that you see them wearing Excalibur, which is purely fantasy, is like no one would be able to maneuver in like that in those freaking things. But like you would see that like repeated because it was Excalibur was just this fantastic movie that everyone talked about. But oh man.
Don't you hate it how if something works once, they try to make everything into that thing?
Oh, yeah. It's like
I distinctly remember how ridiculous the armor was in First Night because it was like Gambison just with coats of plates over it, and then I think the other side had just like weird studded. They look like buttons on Gambison. It was bizarre.
It also makes no sense. Okay, so like we didn't really talk about this in the first episode, but one of the big common things with King Arthur is that he is supposed to be young. He is the boy king. So having like a late middle-aged Sean Connery play King Arthur makes no fucking sense.
You make a solid point there, Michael. But then the rebut to that, the rebuke is Sean Connery. He's in your movie.
He's not even the right. No,
Scottish.
I mean, I guess that's closer to the Welsh than the English, but still.
Do you want to hear something funny? Now going back to Blue's original question.
Mm-hmm.
So The Sword and the Stone, I definitely watched as a kid, but the first time I think I really engaged with King Arthur and like mimicked things from the movie, quoted the movie. This is going to sound so ridiculous. And remembered like the names of the knights was My Python, the Holy Grail.
That's fair. It's a fantastic movie. I think that like that is a whole thing that we could talk about in and of itself, is the brilliance that was Monty Python and the Search for the Holy Grail.
So
You know, was another one was that got me interested in Arthur and everything is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, because of the whole Holy Grail bit.
It's true, and that was one of the original knights that was standing vigil.
Yeah, that was it. Was either one of the original Knights from the Round Table, or he was a crusader that had found it during the Crusades. But yeah, no, I'm taking a look at some of these Arthurian movies right now, and I'm just going through, and I'm like, man, I remember this one. There was one that came out recently that was actually really fun. That was kind of like it's called The Kid Who Would Be King. It was a British movie that they did, an English movie that they did, but a year and a half, 2 years ago, where this kid ends up fighting Excalibur in the modern day, and Merlin is played by Patrick Stewart, and Merlin goes back and forth between being like a teenager and being Patrick Stewart. And it was really fun, and like they're going around and trying to fight these monsters that they're being brought about by Morgan Le Fay. And so this kid makes his own new Knights of the Round Table to fight off Morgan and her demons. And I was like, this is really fun.
I have a movie poster for one, Michael, that I actually never saw, but I went to go see some other movie and they handed it to me. It's like one of those free posters for coming on opening night or something. And my dad has it.
It's King Arthur, if you say that it's the Clive Owen King Arthur, don't worry, Poland.
It's the Guy Ritchie King Arthur.
Oh God.
That came out like 3 years ago.
Stop.
I never actually saw the movie, but I have the poster hanging up framed because the poster looks cool. So the biggest shame about that is I fucking love Guy Ritchie. I do. I know. Rock and Roll, like, Two Smoking Barrels.
Classics. Yeah, freaking Snatch is one of my favorite movies of all time, and is my evidence that Jason Statham does have range as an actor. He just chooses to play the same fucking thing over and over again. I've seen him play different roles. I love Snatch. But that movie was garbage.
It had Jude Law in it.
It was just bad. And like
the leading guy from Vikings. What's his name? Charlie Hunnam.
That guy isn't the lead. The lead from Vikings is not Charlie Hunnam. Charlie Hunnam was the lead of Sons of Anarchy.
Oh, okay.
And he is the guy that plays Arthur in that movie. And it's a shame because Charlie Hunnam actually would have made a very good Arthur. He's even from Southern England, and I think has Welsh ancestry. So like he would have actually been a fantastic Arthur. But A, the tone of that movie was just so freaking weird. And then B, Guy Ritchie wanted to make a Guy Ritchie movie set in medieval times, and it just doesn't work. Like he effectively was like, I want to make Snatch or Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, except I want it to be in Dark Ages England. And that's what his Arthur movie was.
Oh.
And it doesn't work. It's horrible. Like they even have like the whole. You remember how in like Snatch when they're going out to go like plan how to rob the place. They have the whole thing where they break down everything. There is a sequence that is identical to that in Arthur, where like Arthur is putting down the plan on how they're going to take down Jude Law's character. I'm just like, oh, this could have worked with Robin Hood. If he had gone Robin Hood for that, he might have been able to pull that off. But Oh boy.
That's sketchy. Now, Poland, I think you had some DVDs there before. So if they're within reach, man, feel free to hold them up. So they're within reach, like literal reach. What is this? And why do you have it?
This is Michael Oden's favorite King Arthur movie.
No, it is not. It is not even
And
close.
providentially, my stepmom just found this at my dad's house and said, "Oh, I found one of your old DVDs in the basement." It's like, "Oh, what was it?" It was Tomb Raider and this. So I found it just in time for this show, Michael. It came back into my possession.
I hate you.
To its credit.
You know what's sad is that you managed to get like a Keira Knightley back when she was in her like prime as a movie star, and just drop dead gorgeous to play Guinevere, which is like perfect casting because she's supposed to be like this unnatural beauty and everything, and then you make her ugly as shit and make her look emaciated the entire movie, and I'm just going, ha ha.
Now, to this movie's credit, it's not a great film, but unlike a lot of other King Arthur movies, it tries to go away from the fantasy and tries to go back to what we think King Arthur actually was. So they're dealing with, Romans and Celts and Picts and all this other stuff, and Saxons. Like, they're dealing in more grounded terms, and the armor and stuff is more appropriate than what you would see like in Excalibur or First Knight.
They just did a horrible fucking job. If you want to experience an Arthur story that is more grounded towards reality, read Bernard Cornwell's Warlord Chronicles. I repeat, Bernard Cornwell's Warlord. Put that thing off the screen. Put it off the screen.
2 thumbs up. And if you notice down here, it will play on your Xbox. Look at that. It's Xbox.
Yeah, good for it. Good for it. Let it go die. Read Bernard Cornwell's Warlord Chronicles. The first book is called Winter King. The second book is called Enemy of God. And the third book is called Excalibur. They are some of my favorite books that I have ever read, period. And Enemy of God is probably my favorite book Bernard Cornwell has written. It's a very good book. He's giving those 2 thumbs up to that horrible movie that he no longer has on screen, and you ignore him. You ignore him because
we're talking about movies. You're talking about movies. What movie can you see more grounded King Arthur?
I can't. Luckily, one of the premium cable networks has acquired the rights to make Warlord Chronicles into a show.
Oh, there we go.
I am literally when that was announced, I was like, I swear to God, if you screw this up like you did Last Kingdom, I'm going to murder some people.
Well, in the meantime, guys, go check this out.
No. It's like hey guys, go if you want good Arthurian stuff, go watch Cursed on Netflix. No.
You could do that.
No,
okay, slight subject change because it's time. We've hit this. I've seen a lot of people making reference to Morgan Le Fay. In fact, Evolution, or I don't know how to say their name, but it's No Sleep is the same comic company. They're putting out a Morgan Le Fay book. I've yet to see the first issue, so I'm not saying I recommend it. Just it exists, and I haven't seen it, so I'm not disrecommending it either. Anyway, she's popped up a bunch of places. Fill me in about her.
So Morgane Le Fay is a very interesting character. She's either usually one of Arthur's main antagonists or one of Arthur's main confidants. It depends on which translation you're looking at. In a lot of the fantasy stuff, she is one of the main antagonists and is the rival to Merlin. She is a female magic user, and she is the person that brings down Merlin in the books, and she is the person that gets rid of Excalibur's sheath. She is also the mother to Mordred.
Oh, okay. No, wait, Mordred. Name I don't know. Where does she fit around Arthur?
Mordred is the man that killed Arthur.
Oh, I keep thinking Mordred's a female. All right, yes. Sorry.
Mordred is the knight of the Round Table that usurps the throne while Arthur is away, and they have the final fight at the Battle of Camlin Fields, and Arthur kills Mordred, but then Mordred lands a fatal strike
Okay.
on him as well.
I can't decide if it's better that I haven't read these yet, so that I can ask questions that people who don't know things, need, or if I should read them so I quit being so I quit wasting time.
I know it's great. Well, like right now, like we aren't having we aren't having a lot of too many questions right now. So this is what this episode is for. It's just for fun and shits and giggles.
Yeah.
So like that's what it is. And so yeah, we absolutely fine with explaining that. And Mordred is a really interesting character as well, because if you go off of things like the stories that the movie Excalibur is based off of, Mordred is not only the son of Morgan, she's the son of Arthur. Morgan disguised herself using magic to confuse Arthur into thinking that she was Guinevere. And they slept together and conceived Mordred. And Mordred is, in some stories, Arthur's kid.
Oh, in some stories.
You have to realize that there are so many different versions of Arthur. Like in the first story that he appeared, was that goodness gracious, why am I blanking? The Thomas Malory's, I think.
Mm-hmm.
What was the last one that we were talking about last time? I'm blanking.
Wait, where are my notes?
And this is why this is the not serious.
I have notes here, I think. No?
I do too. I'm pulling them up.
It was the French E1. Arthur Oden?
The one written by Milton?
No, it's Geoffrey Monmouth's Historia Regum Britanniae was where Mordred first appears, and in that he's Arthur's kid, but in that Morgana is not a villain, she's a nun. That was one of Arthur's close confidants, and she has nothing to do with Mordred. But you have to understand that when a myth is formed, it's like a game of telephone, right? Mm-hmm. So everybody starts to throw in their own little bits of artistic license to make the myth grow and everything, and everybody has their own takes. And it's gotten to a point where it's just like there's so many different versions of it, and there are so many different takes where it's like, I remember there was a book series that came out when I was a kid, or at least there's one book that I remember where Mordred was the good guy and Arthur was the bad guy. And like that's always like a fun thing for modern writers to do, is kind of flip the script.
And I discount the modern stuff if it's, let's play with it, as opposed to the modern, well, I mean, of course, these are more modern people who have looked at old stories and reassembled them. I don't discount that. But when I say, what is the old legend? And it's like, well, there are 50 of them. Okay. As long as they're old enough and not people just playing, like, I'm just going to do something now for today and make it woke. No.
You have well, like it's not even that, because like that book I was talking about came out well before the whole wokeness thing became a trend. But the big thing is that we have to recognize that a lot of these stories were patroned by wealthy noblewomen. Mm-hmm. Back in the day, a artist or a scribe or what have you, they would work based off of commission. So you would be paid to write a story. And when you had Thomas Malory, the Morte Arthur, come out, this is where the Arthurian stories take a turn down the romance, down to the romances and what have you. And there's stories of gallantry and heroism and chivalry and love and gallantry. And ultimately, this was not quite like erotica novels as they are today, with like women have their romance novels that you go to that romance section in Barnes and Noble and you're just like, oh god. But like that was kind of like the prototype of it. Was it was just like it was this world where knights fought for love, and the political side of marriages wasn't there. People were married for love, and people got together because they loved one another, and it was a contrast to the real world. It was a sense of escapism, and that's where a lot of this stuff grew from. So like when you're looking at this, you have like 50 million different takes of this story, and all of it was pretty much designed to cater whomever the patron of the story was, what they wanted.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
That ties to something I was thinking about, which was in the older stories, I know that they tend to gain variations in it. When people didn't take this as religious, it was known to be semi-fictitious at a minimum, but they might tailor to their own audience, that kind of thing. So that's why I'm cool with a lot of the old. The idea that there are old variations of legends like this, instead of no, what's the one true one? It's like they just didn't handle it like that then.
There are better ones.
Yeah.
Like before the French got their hands on it.
Yeah, and like
right, Michael?
What?
I said before the French affected it.
For the what affected it?
I said before the French affected.
Oh.
It was like, hey, we're going to make all the best knights not
French.
English. They will all be Normans.
Surprise.
They will all be French, and that way, King Arthur gets one-upped in his own story. Freaking dicks.
Earlier, Poland, you mentioned the Once and Future King, so I put a link to that. Everybody goes to Amazon, so I'm just linking things in Barnes and Noble just to even the hand a little bit, not to promote Barnes and Noble, but just because there's enough promotion of Amazon out there, Once
and Future King's a great book.
Okay,
it is.
So was your exposure once you got a serious exposure to Arthur? You tend to pull up DVDs a lot, but so you've read that one.
Yeah, it was a long time ago when I was younger. So it was, I think it was probably like 5th or 6th grade, but I remember really enjoying it, and it being written in such a way that at that time I could appreciate it and but still see some of the depth that was involved. And I think the same year I read A Wrinkle in Time, which was another book that was also kind of like a little trippy as well, and was pretty in depth. So yeah, I would definitely recommend that one as a starting point for anyone that's getting into it. And then you can go to the Oden book list afterwards. So I think it is a great starting point for anyone who's just getting into it or has never read a King Arthur book.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Once and Future King is a really good entry. A Boy's King Arthur and His Knights, which Blue found at when he was going through. That's another really good one. As I said, Howard Pyle's King Arthur and His Knights was the first one that I read, and I love. Howard Pyle is a great storyteller, but a brilliant artist as well. And so it was packed with these beautiful illustrations. I'm getting a hi from Rick Saylor. Hey Rick, thanks for tuning in. He's saying hi to everybody. But
Rick's the man.
He is. Thanks for being here, Rick. Guys, if you want to name a film or a place you found Arthurian stories, go ahead, put it in the chat, and we'll see if we can bring that up to these guys and see what they say.
Yeah.
Although, some of us might be nauseated already, so let's see what happens.
Well, what's so fascinating about, in terms of talking about pop culture with King Arthur, is that there's so many, since there were so many different elements to this story and elements that were added in over time, people borrow things for certain movies, games, books. Like some stories will focus on the Sword in the Stone. Some will focus on the Lady in the Lake. Some will focus on the Holy Grail aspect and tie it into, the Crusades and all those sorts of things. So there are all these things that were added over time, be it by Saxons or by, the Normans and French, and that nowadays have trickled down. And so now in various books and games and comics, you get these different elements that people focus on. It's like, okay, this is a King Arthur story focused on the Holy Grail, or a King Arthur story focused on acquiring Excalibur. So it's interesting how it is a layered myth in itself. And since it is so layered and it is so rich, I think that's why it's also become so, widespread as well. Because people just pull out little bits that they like and use it to greater or lesser effectiveness. But I think that's part of the reason why it's become so widespread.
Cool. All right. The reason
Absolutely.
Did you have more, Michael?
No.
Okay. I don't want to run on to it. I don't want to. I'm sorry, Poland. I don't want to change subjects if you guys aren't ready.
No.
The reason I asked about Morgan Le Fay was because a recent exposure for me to King Arthur, or I should say, Arthurish stuff, was I finally caught up on the TV show Stargate. So for anyone who hasn't seen it, Michael, just take an Advil now.
You had explained this to me, and I was just like, "What?
What the hell are you talking about?"
Okay, Avalon and Stargate. Is that what it is?
Yeah,
is that their angle? Yeah, go on the Avalon.
Yeah, well, except that they redefined everything, and in this case, Morgan Le Fay was an ally to Merlin, and that show in their last 2 seasons, they needed a new enemy. So it was the bigger enemy in the next galaxy over that had to be defeated a certain way and whatnot. And whatever that enemy was allegedly the one that populated planets throughout our galaxy. Okay, Stargate stuff. So Stargate already had a history of, if you know the film or the early parts of the series, taking old mythologies and just saying those are all alien civilizations that had a presence on Earth at one point in time. So whatever. And they ran that until it was done, and they defeated the big enemy. So with the next enemy, it's that they had previously been at the new enemy. God, they're called the Ori. They had previously been at war with a faction that wanted to protect humans and life and whatnot. And this war gets picked up, and it turns out that some people from that whole shindig came to Earth to escape, help preserve Earth, whatnot. And that was Merlin and Morgan Le Fay. So in whatever civil war that was, that's how Earth got populated. It's just this huge thing. But there's so much more to it. But this is not a Stargate show. Anyway, they use some. I thought it was pretty cool. They did some funny stuff here and there. Since I didn't know the correct definitions of things, it was easier to just run with. Whereas if I was more purist because I knew the stories, I probably couldn't run with it. They just gave a new definition to Merlin and Morgan Le Fay. They actually had Merlin show up and die. They unfroze him and he just keels over like that's it. He's done. So
bye Merlin.
Hi Merlin. Bye Merlin. And at one point when some of this ancient technology downloads knowledge into one of the main characters, he looks at one of the other main characters and says, "Yeah, you do look like Percival." I mean, they get ridiculous at times, but that was my exposure to Arthurian stuff. Is still just commonly being picked for new things to do, but it's not all subversive and postmodern or anything like that. They're just having fun. They also merged it with Atlantis, and I'm like, okay, but they made it work. So,
because isn't Stargate Atlantis a separate show?
Yes, but the mythology within the two shows is the two go together.
If you remember the original movie, they also had Egyptian stuff.
The original movie was only Egyptian and has nothing to do with the series.
Okay. Yeah, I remember them having portals in that too, that the Egyptians had.
So that was my exposure to, hey, people are still using Arthur out there and not just for mainstream movies, and it's kind of fun. But I'm gonna leave it at that. So I think I've driven Michael nuts enough.
It's all good. It's all good. I've just been looking up
Michael, you twitching?
Of Excalibur because I was just curious And so like because I was curious because I remember Morgane Le Fay and Excalibur. I was like, man, because I was in middle school when I saw that, and so that was like me be like, oh man, she's attractive, and that was always something that had I was always curious, and sure enough, she was played by Helen Mirren.
Oh,
Back then, which is weird to think about now, because I think the last thing I saw her in was in Red, with Bruce Willis and all of them, which was really cool. But it was just fun to go look up. I was trying not to have my head explode by the Stargate stuff again.
that's okay. I just wanted to dump that and be done with it. So
In the past year for me, other than the radioactive exposure I've had from Michael Oden to King Arthur, in the past year, I went back and played, and anyone who's followed me knows that I've played all these games. I went back and played Tomb Raider Legends, and it is steeped in King Arthur. And if they're Blue, playing off of what you're talking about with Stargate, Avalon is a place that you go to, and it's like an otherworldly place where Excalibur itself is actually a key, and there are these various dais, or there's the plural of dais. There's various daises, I guess, around the world where you can input the sword if you have the sword, and then you can teleport, from one location to another, and teleport to Avalon itself, which is interesting.
Was that
was
in Underworld? You said
it's in
which?
Tomb Raider Legends, 2006.
Because I remember playing the one where you find Excalibur and you fight the big snake as the big boss fight at the end.
wait, no, that's
Which
one
one
of
was
the.
that?
That's 2006. That's Legends.
Okay, I remember playing that, and that was really cool.
Yeah, Legends is great. I have a clip pulled up here.
I thought that was Tomb Raider and the Chamber of Secrets. I'm sorry, that was really bad. It sounded funny in my head.
Shame on you.
The anti-humor.
The anti-humor for sure. Shame on you, Blue.
Now everyone knows why I'm so quiet on Bancross streams. But anyway.
Just let.
I'm gonna share a tiny clip from the game. I think we can do that, right? Can do that.
Yeah. If you pop me a share screen, if you're using Chrome, or there we go, add to stream.
I have a timestamp here. Thank you, this person. All right.
What are we looking at?
We're looking at myth, except it's real. They're all here. The court of Camelot.
You're sure about this? King Arthur, who washed verily of ye loins of Uther Pendragon?
I've no doubt about the authenticity of this tomb, Alistair. Arthur was the 11th century figure that became legend. The once and future king was as real then as the air I'm breathing now.
I don't know, Laura.
Excalibur, the sword in the stone. That's how it always goes, isn't it?
Pardon?
Swords in stones, Alistair. They're part of the monomyth. There wasn't just one Excalibur or one Merlin. We keep seeing swords and daises all over the world because they were everywhere.
So you're saying that everywhere they went, they raised up kings, shaping the course of human destiny?
Well, it's a possibility.
Who? And what happened to them and their swords?
Perhaps they're in Avalon. It's as good a place as any. Except our Merlin was killed and our Excalibur was left in pieces in the hands of the locals.
So where's Avalon?
So is that it? There we go.
Yeah.
So I the first thing that came to my head watching that clip was, man, I remember when this was considered like the pinnacle of graphics.
Yes.
Like it.
Doesn't it?
And
Break-
I'm like, oh boy.
Yep.
That was one generation of gaming ago. That was Xbox 360. Oh God.
That was a 360 game?
Yeah.
Oh, it looked kind of like, okay, all right. It looked kind of like a Monkey Island game to me, the one from 2000.
Monkey Island. Whoa.
Yeah.
2006. So yeah, it should be 360. But
I remember I beat it on the 360. It was great.
yeah,
It was early 360 though, I think.
it's a lot of fun, and it holds up. Like I said, I replayed it last summer, and it's a lot of fun to go back. And there's actually a few mods out there for texture updates on these games. But as you can see, I mean, the game. Sorry for spoilers, but yeah, there's a lot that's tied into King Arthur, and they have like all the knights in that chamber lined up. You see their names on the placards. I thought it was pretty neat. A lot of nods, like they mentioned the once and future king, these sorts of things. They definitely put some effort into it to try and put a different spin.
Now, by the way, you have some competition coming for your fandom with somebody told me I was way too quiet. I got to lean in. You have some competition coming for your fandom of Laura there. Jason Black wants to marry her. I think you two are gonna have to wrestle it out at the fan fest.
Nope. Hey, Blue, we're on an Arthurian stream. They have to joust.
Oh, they have to. Oh,
right.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, and he's a big dude. You are so screwed, Poland.
On a smaller target on mount.
Wear that really angular shield with the neck guard, okay?
Lean into all of it.
Oh man. So okay, one other question would be, you know how sometimes you watch a movie and you're like, that was really cool, and then a minute later you go, wait, that was just a riff on this other thing without telling us it was this other thing. What have you guys ever noticed a film or book just being like, oh, they're just retelling Arthur with all the names changed and the setting different, that is the same thing?
There's been one or two. I can't think of like the names direct, but like the whole concept of the young boy having leadership thrust upon him and unifying people against a common threat is kind of one of those things where you kind of look at like this like almost a universal story. There are a lot of things that have done it. There's an anime called Heroic Legends of Arslan, which feels very similar to King Arthur, except it takes place in ancient Persia, and I really like that. And that's actually based off of a Persian story about like I'm blanking on what the original name was, but like they have a very similar kind of theme to it, and it's a great show, but it definitely feels like King Arthur except Persia instead of England.
I notice in a lot of anime, they usually the whiny protagonist who's a brat that you want to kill at the beginning is supposed to be the hero. They often don't go through enough of a transformation or growing up, and then suddenly they do, but they're thrust into that authority figure. Like Attack on Titan, Eren is the main character. Okay, good. You're rolling your eyes. That's good. I can't stand him. All right. I like every other character in the show, but it's like an inverted form of this.
The thing with anime is there's multiple different genres, and so the genre that you're talking about in particular is called shonen, and the whole point of shonen is that it's a coming of age story.
Yeah.
There are some shows that handle this better than others. Arslan, I think, actually handles that really well. I wouldn't say Arslan's annoying or anything. He's definitely weak, but he's someone that is aware that he is not the strongest person in his party, and he grows very quickly. And you come to really like Arslan as he progresses as a character, because he's like he knows that he's not the smartest. He knows that he's not the strongest. And so he relies on the people that are around him to accomplish the things that he might have his shortcoming. Where he is instrumental is in the fact that he unifies all of these people and is a strong leader.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be the smartest to be the best leader. You don't have to be the strongest. You have to be able to unite someone to a single cause, and that's where Arslan excels as a character. And I thought that was really, really good. There are a lot of shonen. It's pretty standard where like you look at Naruto, for instance, and like the first series of Naruto is completely insufferable.
Uh-huh.
Um,
I tried.
it is a very good show, and it has a lot of layers to it. I do think that it is a very good show, and it has a fantastic ensemble of support characters. And then by the time you get to Shippuden, it really evolves. It gets a massive level up. The other big thing with Naruto is that you need a filler list guide because there's so much of it, and the filler in Naruto is terrible. There's no other word for it. It's bad. Like there are a few arcs here or there that are solid, but otherwise just skip it.
Yeah. Not just episodes, but arcs to skip.
That you have to realize. So like when they were making this anime, the manga was still coming out. They didn't have the whole story yet.
Oh.
And so what they would do is whenever there'd be like an intermission or what have you, where they were waiting for the next chapters to get up so that they could adapt them, they would do these filler arcs that don't feel authentic to the show at all. There are a few of them that are fun, but for the most part, they're pretty garbage.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly would never, like, even the ones that were fun, I would certainly never go back and rewatch them.
Yeah.
But when Naruto is on point, it is a top tier story. It's just there's especially when you look at like the earlier seasons in the original anime, Naruto and the rest of Team 7, they're 12-year-olds. They're completely insufferable, and I think in that way they're written very authentically. Like they feel like middle schoolers. But the big thing that's always been great about Naruto is the atmosphere that they are placed in, and the things that they experience are very unique. And the support cast is what really drives that first series. And then in Shippuden, you get to see Naruto and his generation start to actually come into the roles that they're meant to be in their society, and that's where it starts to get really good.
Okay, so back to Arthur then.
Yes, but back to Arthur.
Yeah, we've got coming of age stories that are really different, like the whiny kid. When I first got into anime, my buddy who introduced me to some of it, after I found Attack on Titan, I just said, I want more of this, and he gave me a little tour. He just said, whoever the whiny one is, that's the hero. Great. That's
it genuinely depends on the anime. Like Berserk, Guts isn't whiny at all. In fact, he's like the exact opposite of it. But he is the protagonist, and he murders people a lot.
Yeah, my buddy was wrong. He was sitting there telling me this at the same time he's telling me anime just means made in Japan. There are all these different genres. So it's like, okay, all right, I'll find stuff I like. Anyway, but as far as coming of age goes, so in Once and Future King, and let's just take as two easy to get standards, Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table, that's the older one I have, between those two books, or if you want to toss in one other, Morte, between those three, are we really how old is Arthur at the beginning, and are we really seeing a coming of age, or is his more of an adult growth that's going on?
I would say that Poland, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm fairly certain that both Once and Future and in King Arthur and his Knights, it's been a lot longer since I've read Malory's Morte. But Arthur, the whole point is that Arthur's around 15, 16 when he draws when he becomes king, because that's a huge point of contest initially. Is there are a lot of people that refuse to accept that he's king because he's so young, and he has to kind of do one of the first, Literature Devil did a fantastic video on Superman Relevant and talks a lot about the monomyth.
He really did.
And going through the different trials. And the first trial of Arthur is the trial of strength, of the showcase of strength, that just because he's young doesn't mean that he is not worthy of this, and that he will be a strong ruler. And so he ends up having to go up against a whole bunch of other warlords in England, the most notable of which was King Lot. And so like the yeah, that's a big part of the Arthurian story, especially when you get into the romances and the fantasy, is the element that Arthur was young. He and as a result, people did not cede the authority to him quickly. He had to earn it.
Poland, you got anything to add?
No, I think both of those are a really good point to come in. And if you're looking for, like Michael said, if you're looking for him, the boy king aspect of the story, because it seems like there's a divide. Like the movies always focus on, unless you're talking about like Sword of the Stone or something, always seems to focus on an older King Arthur. So if you're looking for, from adolescence, the actual boy king story, I think both those books, at least Once a Future King, for sure, you'll get that. And actually, that book starts with Uther Pendragon being the king, the current king, which is interesting because sometimes
because it goes from Uther as king, the fall of Uther, and then that chaos period between the fall of Uther and the rise of Arthur, and then Arthur going to get to become the king and everything.
Okay.
Not to cut you off.
No, you're good. I'll start with Poland. Just I've got timers on each of you, and I'm making sure we get Farah. No, I'm just kidding.
Mute the mic.
Yes.
Anyway, because I took up a lot of time today talking about Stargate, so we got to give Poland some more time. Poland, as a history major, and I don't mean to get too academic with this, so when you see stuff in movies, what are the things that trigger you about that's not how it was back then?
Well, you heard me mention armor earlier. Armor is a big one. Always has been. Armor. Armor bothers me a lot. And I always find it amusing the new and inventive ways we decide to portray armor. Like, for instance, leather armor. People think leather armor is like really all over the place. No. There's very little historical evidence and or portrayals of it in artwork to verify that leather was in common use as armor by itself. It was more likely going to be like wool gambeson, and then you're going to get into chainmail, and then eventually your coat of plates. Well, not coat of plates, but some type of loose plate armor. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the things. Weapons, of course, also fall into that category. Another thing that's weird is that we can't seem to get dates right. I don't know why, because a lot of that stuff's pretty well documented. Like, Braveheart gets hit for that a lot. Like, Braveheart, doesn't get any of the dates right in terms of when the William Wallace events actually took place. So those are the things that get me. Names is another one. Because yet again, I don't think there's really much excuse. But when we're talking about King Arthur, I mean, it's a little bit more leeway. But I have to say, definitely armor, weapons, dates, names, because those are things you should be able just to say, like, okay, this is at least, if we don't know like for certain on something, there's at least usually some consensus that we've arrived at as a historical community for the time being. So those are the big things. And then also, Blue, I know you really appreciate this, but also the diction that is used, the vocabulary in films. So I know that you can't have people speaking like Old English necessarily, but
right.
There are some words and phrases that will really pull you out in a heartbeat. So
yeah. My first introduction to that was my dad in the middle of an episode of MASH one night after dinner, because it used to be on every evening, saying, that's not right. They didn't use the word barf back then. And it's like, oh, and I'd never thought about that words just kind of come out of nowhere. But, sort of like barf came out of nowhere. Anyway, Michael, your big triggers.
To go with that same question, as a bit of a history nut myself, I think that a lot of the things that Poland hit on are huge. And since we're relating this to Arthur, for me, it all depends on the direction that they're going with it. if they're leaning far more into the fantasy element, I give a lot more leeway on the armor and weapons and everything because it's fantastical. It's not supposed to be necessarily a representation of stuff that happened. But the thing that will immediately take me out of it is like, perfect example is Cursed, right? I had mentioned this earlier in the show. There's a show on Netflix right now called Cursed, and it's kind of a rework of the Arthurian myth that focuses on Nimue, who is the Lady of the Lake. And so one of the big issues that I have with this show is it can never pinpoint down its setting and the atmosphere that it's supposed to contain. Because one moment it will feel like they're going for that pure fantasy and they'll have almost that Renaissance style look to it that has become associated with Arthur through like the famous paintings and everything and all that. But then the next moment they'll be trying to portray things like Dark Ages of England, and everyone will be in like chainmail and like it won't look like high fantasy at all. It will look like they're trying to ground it in realism. And then, I think I mentioned, I know that I've mentioned this to Poland, but there's this awful scene where they're going to like what's supposed to be an old battlefield where the Romans had gotten slaughtered. And it's supposed to be like this haunted thing, and they get there, and all the Roman armor and like the Legion banners and everything look like they were put there last week. It was like, yes, this is the site of an old battle, a place where the Romans were massacred. There's evil here, and you're just like, by a long time ago, do you mean last week? Because like there's not even like there's no rust on the armor. In fact, how are there skulls under this when like the armor hasn't rusted at all? Like there's no one that's been taking care of these sets, and they were using like the stereotypical like Hollywood Roman legionnaire from like the middle of the empire that required a lot of maintenance to keep shiny. It was one of those things that like completely, I was like, I can't keep up with it. Like maintaining your setting is so important, and there's a lot of things that go into that. There's it's your display of aesthetics. It's the way that characters talk as he hit and that's one of the things that Guy Ritchie film did horribly, is you have this movie that's taken place in this dark age of England, and everyone sounds like they're talking that like they're from everyone that's speaking it sounds like they're from the London docks circa 2000. Like and I'm just like, that's an odd choice, Guy Ritchie.
It's funny it's cool that you'd mention the the armor that's not aged properly when they're going for realism instead of fantasy and stuff like that. What takes me out of it is when I can see the goal boxes left on the soccer pitch that they're filming on, in the background. Anyway, Shane Burgess tells us the Belgariad by David Eddings is a very Arthurian. It has magic wizards, a grail search with noble companions, an orb which identifies a king, and fitted as a pommel of a massive sword capable of magic. Cool.
That sounds really cool. I don't think I've actually read that. That sounds like a good read.
Jason.
I think he's trying to go to bed or something like that.
No, he said, my question for today is, Poland
yeah.
has 2 beds. Is one for a pet? Oh.
Do you have an answer for the man, Poland?
Boy, can you help me out here? I don't know. I want to be as diplomatic as possible. So I don't know. I may be in earshot. I don't know. A friend of mine has been staying with me for some time, and that is his residence currently.
Okay.
So that is where he sleeps. Damn. right there.
Well, you have the kingly footboard and headboard thing going on.
You know,
He has to
I told-
establish his dominance in the room, Blue.
I told him that it has to be out of the way, so that's where it's out of the way.
Okay, and Rick Saylor says he honestly forgot that he played that game. It was fun. Is he referring to the Lara Croft
Tomb
game?
Raider game? Yeah, it's one
Probably.
of the best Tomb Raider games, honestly. Having played, including the newest ones, it's one of the best ones. So if I had to do a quick summation, since I know we're at the end, best King Arthur comedy is still Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Best movie is clearly that Clive Owen. I'm just kidding. The best is a joke, Michael. It's a joke.
Angry.
Once and Future King, great entry point, and Tomb Raider Legends if you want to play a game. If you wanna
What
play
did you end up going with for your best movie?
Holy Grail. Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
You said best comedy was Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Yeah, I was going to let you give the best movie, Michael. The best serious movie.
I wanted to hear your opinion. I'm I'm not going to tear you down for it.
I honestly don't. I don't know if I've seen any of them recently enough to really judge them.
That's-
I watched Holy Grail a lot growing up. I have it like on DVD. This one I have on DVD, but I haven't watched that DVD probably in like 16 years. Like I said, this was just found in the basement like not that long ago. So
It should have stayed there. So
Yeah,
that's all I
clearly.
no, it's like, so for me, you're gonna hear some of the same, like, so like best comedy, like there's only one Arthurian comedy that I've seen that has stuck with me to this to any degree, and that's Monty Python and the Holy Grail. It's a classic. You can't get better.
I'm really surprised because you guys complained about being taken out of the setting and all that, and when the Black Mariah shows up at the end to take everybody off and the police are there, it's
but
like
that's
it's a little
actively like
anachronistic,
that's one of the running gags throughout the thing is that like you have the breaks where you have the historian that's like supposed to be like kind of giving you this like classical narration to the Arthurian myth, and then he gets murdered halfway through the movie by some random knight, and it just goes, oh god. It was brilliant. I loved it. Like it's different when it's satire. You can play. It's the same thing with a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court. It's utterly like the Connecticut Yankee brings a freaking minigun to Arthurian. He brings a Gatling gun and teaches them how to do a Gatling gun. It completely changes how Arthurian myth goes. It like satire is satire. You can completely screw up the rules there. That's fine. What's there?
of course, I wasn't complaining. I just wanted to say something ironic. But it's you bring up the Connecticut Yankee thing. I mentioned to my family we're doing this show, and the first thing I'm told is I need to read that one, the Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. It's like, let me read the real one first, so the satire makes sense. Anyway, all right. Any other?
Yeah.
Sorry, Michael. Go ahead.
For best film, probably Excalibur. I think that it's so classic. There are a lot of really great Arthurian movies, especially when you get to the old. Like there were a lot of movies done during like the black and white era that are really good to watch with for Arthur. But I genuinely think that one of those films that really just does a great job of encompassing the fantasy and romance of Arthur in such an authentic way is Excalibur. It really does feel like the high fantasy movie of Arthur. I don't know if it'll be a very hard thing for somebody to top.
Cool.
And then favorite TV series of Arthur, probably Camelot. I know that got a lot of flack. It was a show that you either loved it or hated it. But I really enjoyed Camelot. I think that Joseph Fiennes' portrayal of Merlin was really good. And then great entry point as a book. either a boy's King Arthur and his Knights or Howard Pyle's King Arthur and his Knights.
And I found another book that I think is unrelated. Actually, probably shouldn't have opened my fat mouth. A Howard Pyle book that I don't think is actually Arthurian. Should not have mentioned
I
it.
think it might be, actually. It's Men of Iron. Right?
Men of Iron, yeah. Is that?
I'm double checking, but I'm fairly certain that might be King Arthur.
And by the way, Shane Burgess, I've been waiting for this to pop up in my feed. Shane Burgess agrees with you. So there you go.
It is not Arthur. It's not Arthurian, but it's Howard Pyle, so it's worth reading.
Yeah.
Miles Falworth trains under the Earl of Mackworth to become a chivalrous knight. Once he obtains his knighthood, Miles begins to gain honor for himself by winning jousting matches and serving the Earl of Mackworth's brother in France. After returning home to England, Miles confronts and vanquishes a family enemy, the Earl of Alban, who had falsely accused Miles's father of treason. Through Miles's honorable victory, he clears his father's name and earns the right to call himself for himself to court and marry Lady Alice, the Earl of Mackworth's niece and ward. So it feels like just reading that feels like kind of almost like a spin-off kind of feel, like that feels like something that you'd see in an Arthurian story of like one of the knights from the Round Table.
Cool. So we've been mentioning different books. If people want to get into it, I'll put those links. I'm just using Barnes and Noble because I can find books on there, but I'll put links to like King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table, and then the boy who would be king. What else did I put there? I've got a link for Morte. They're all in the chat. I'll add them to the description sometime later after the stream. Morte de Arthur and King Arthur and His Knights by Howard Pyle, which is not the same as the Knights of the Round Table, and The Once and Future King by T.H. White, which Poland read. Now, next time, it's probably in maybe 2 weeks, maybe next week if things go weird, but in 2 weeks, we'll have our next serious episode. We're going to pick up at the year 1136 with what was going on in that period, and then dive into Arthur in that period. That's how I want to organize it a little bit more. History first, do your chores first, I guess. And then, hopefully we might review a little bit of what was the difference in relationship between Caliber and Excalibur. So I'm waiting for that one when the time comes. Anyway, any closing words, you guys?
Tomb Raider Legends is currently $7 on Steam.
Okay.
Elysian Fields, the Pyramid Gambit is live on Indiegogo. We have 3 days left in the first 30 days, and we would really like for you guys to come out and give us some support and help us continue to grow. We're almost at 5K, so help us hit it.
Oh yeah, I just popped the link in the chat. That yes, that book looks good. Actually, if I'd planned this better, I would say let's take a look at it right now. But I'm already kind of letting everybody go. Do I have how do I do this? Great show, gents. Thanks. Yeah. Okay, I can't play the trailer just yet. Sorry. Go check out Elysian Fields.
Rip.
I'm sorry. All right, everybody, have a good time. Take care of yourselves. See you. I'm sorry. What'd you say, Mike?
I said just go on ahead and share it across everything. It's all good.
I will. Yeah, everyone, please retweet that book. It actually looks really good, and you can get the original number 0 as a lead-in if you want. There's still some copies of that left, or you can get the hardcover that has it already built into that one one publication, 0 and number 1. Everybody, take care of yourselves. Go watch Bancroft tonight. We'll see y'all later.
See you guys. Godspeed. Oh
no. All right, Poland, we have to leave because otherwise this thing will keep going.
I know.
I hit the wrong button. I hit leave instead of end.
All right. Well, anyways.